Welcome to a story about the shadows we try to outrun and the voices that call us back into the dark. This narrative explores trauma, family secrets, and the heavy price of survival. It is a journey of a woman reclaiming her dignity from the ashes of her past. Viewer discretion is advised as we navigate deep emotional waters. The rain in Tacoma does not wash things clean. It just makes them heavy. It presses the gray sky down against the rooftops until you feel like the clouds are resting on your shoulders, pushing you into the pavement. I moved here because the weather matched my insides. I wanted a place where the sun didn't demand me to be happy, where the fog could hide me if I needed to disappear again. For 7 years, I have been Elizabeth, just Elizabeth, the woman who organizes the archives at the Midtown Library, the woman who wears cardigans buttoned to the neck and buys organic apples on Tuesdays. I built this life like a fortress, brick by quiet brick. I laid the mortar with silence and reinforced the walls with routine. I thought I was safe. I thought the woman I used to be, the girl who went by the name Jade in the dimly lit rooms of Reno, the girl who sold her time and her warmth because the cold of the world was too much to bear, was dead. I buried her. I mourned her. And then I walked away. But the past is not a place you leave behind. It is a ghost that lives in your marrow. It was a Tuesday. The kind of Tuesday that feels like every other day until it splits open. I was in the back room of the library, smelling the comforting scent of dust and decaying paper. Old paper smells like vanilla and almonds. It smells like history that cannot hurt you because it is already done. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a short, violent vibration against my hip. I ignored it. I always ignore numbers I do not know. But then it buzzed again, and a third time. I pulled it out, my fingers trembling slightly. The screen was bright in the dim room. The area code was from back home, that 3-digit sequence that I had blocked out of my mind for nearly a decade. Mom. The word itself felt like a stone in my throat. We hadn't spoken since the day I left, the day she found the cash hidden in my shoebox, the cash that smelled like cheap cologne and desperation. She had looked at me with eyes that didn't see a daughter, but a stain on her carpet, a stain on her reputation. She told me to get out, and I did. I ran until my legs gave out, and then I crawled until I found Tacoma. Why was she calling now? I let it go to voicemail. I couldn't breathe. The air in the archive room suddenly felt thin, as if the oxygen had been sucked out by the ghost on the other end of the line. I stared at the notification. One new voicemail. My heart was hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. Thump, thump, thump. It sounded like someone knocking on a door I had locked and barricaded. I walked to the small window that looked out onto the alley. The rain was coming down in sheets, blurring the world outside into a watercolor of grays and blues. I pressed my forehead against the cold glass. The condensation chilled my skin, grounding me. Anchorajum, that is what my therapist calls it. Find something real. Find something now. The cold glass, the smell of paper, the sound of the rain. I am Elizabeth. I am safe. I pressed play. The speaker crackled, static, and then her voice. It was older, rougher, like sandpaper dragged over concrete. Elizabeth. Hearing my name in her voice made my knees weak. I slid down the wall until I was sitting on the floor, hugging my knees to my chest. Don't come home, Elizabeth. I know you heard about Dad. I know people have been talking, but don't you come here. We don't want you. There is nothing here for you. Stay where you are. Never come back. The message ended with a sharp click. The silence that followed was louder than the rain. It was a vacuum, a void. Tears pricked my eyes, hot and stinging. It was exactly what I expected, wasn't it? The rejection, the shame. Even after 7 years, even after my father, apparently, had passed away or was dying, she still couldn't bear the sight of me. She still saw the girl in the short dress. She still saw the neon lights reflecting in my eyes. They finally felt a small light returning, but shadows were already forming around them. If you're hoping they hold on to that fragile moment of hope, give this story a like so their strength doesn't fade. I went to delete the message. My thumb hovered over the trash icon. I wanted it gone. I wanted to burn the digital bridge just like I had burned the real one, but my finger froze. Something about the recording bothered me. It was the background. In the silence of the library, with the phone pressed tight to my ear, I played it again. Elizabeth, don't come home. I closed my eyes, focusing not on her words, but on the space between them. The psychology of sound is a strange thing. We hear what we expect to hear. I expected hate. I expected anger. But listening closely, stripping away my own fear, I heard something else. Her breath was hitching. She wasn't angry. She was terrified. I turned the volume up to the maximum. I pressed the speaker so hard against my ear it hurt. Stay where you are. Never come back. And then, right at the end, in the split second before the line went dead, there was a sound. It wasn't her. It was a metallic click, like a door latching shut, and then a whisper, barely audible. It was so faint I thought I might be hallucinating it, projecting my own madness onto the recording. Please. It was my mother's voice, but it wasn't directed at the phone. It was directed at someone in the room with her. I sat there, frozen. The cold from the window seeped into my back. My mother hadn't called to banish me. She hadn't called to spit on my memory. She was calling to warn me. A shiver, violent and uncontrollable, raked down my spine. It started at the base of my neck and curled around my stomach. The micro-tension in my muscles locked up. Fight or flight? My body remembered this feeling. It was the same feeling I used to get when a car door locked automatically and the driver's smile faded into something sharp. I knew that fear. I knew the texture of it. It tasted like copper and adrenaline. Why would my mother be afraid? She was the Iron Woman, the matriarch, the judge and the jury. Nothing scared her. I played the end of the message again. The click. The door. Please. It sounded like a plea for mercy. I stood up. The archive room felt too small now. The walls were closing in. I paced the narrow aisle between the metal shelves. My father. She mentioned my father. I know you heard about Dad. I hadn't heard anything. I had cut off every contact. I had no social media, no mutual friends. I was a ghost. I went to the computer at my desk. My hands were shaking so bad I mistyped his name twice. Arthur Miller, Savannah, Georgia. Obituary. The search bar blinked at me. The cursor pulsed like a heartbeat. Enter. The screen filled with results. And there it was. A local news article from 3 days ago. Local businessman Arthur Miller found dead in home. Police suspect foul play. The floor dropped out from under me. The sensation of falling was visceral. My stomach lurched into my throat. Foul play. My father wasn't sick. He was murdered. And my mother just called me, sounding terrified, telling me to stay away, with the sound of a locking door in the background. I looked at my hands. They were the hands of a librarian. Clean nails, no polish. Soft skin. But beneath the skin, the veins were the same. The blood was the same. I remembered the last time I saw my father. He was sitting in his armchair, the leather creaking as he leaned forward, his face purple with rage. He didn't know the worst of it then. He just knew I was wild. He didn't know about the men. He didn't know about the debt I was paying off, the debt that wasn't even mine, the debt. The memory hit me like a physical blow, a loop of trauma activating in the limbic system. I could smell the cigar smoke. I could feel the rough texture of the velvet sofa in the club where I worked. I could hear the voice of the man who owned the debt. Family pays for family, Jade. Remember that. I thought I had paid it. I thought I had given them enough of my soul to settle the score. But maybe the ledger was never closed. I grabbed my coat. The wool was wet from the morning walk, damp and heavy. I didn't care. I needed to leave. I needed air. I walked out of the library into the pouring rain. I didn't open my umbrella. I let the water soak my hair, plastering it to my skull. I needed to feel the cold to know I was still alive. I stood on the corner of Pacific Avenue, the traffic rushing by in a blur of headlights and tire spray. The world was moving, indifferent to the fact that my life had just shattered. I dialed the number back. It rang, and rang, and rang. We're sorry. The number you have reached is no longer in service. Disconnected. She had called me, warned me, and then cut the line. I looked down at the dark screen of my phone. The reflection staring back at me wasn't Elizabeth the librarian. The eyes were too hard. The jaw was too set. It was Jade looking back at me. And Jade knew things Elizabeth tried to forget. Jade knew how to read a silence. Jade knew that don't come home didn't mean I hate you. It meant run. But I was done running. I had spent 7 years building a wall to keep the monsters out. I didn't realize I had locked myself in with the guilt. I hailed a cab. The yellow car splashed through a puddle and screeched to a halt. Where to? The driver asked. He looked tired, his eyes sagging with the weight of a long shift. I looked at the gray skyline of Tacoma. It was safe here. It was quiet. I could go back to my apartment, make tea, and pretend this never happened. I could listen to my mother. I could stay away. But if I did that, the whisper would haunt me forever. That single word, please, would echo in my sleep until it drove me mad. The airport, I said. My voice was steady, surprisingly steady. Going somewhere nice? He asked, pulling back into traffic. I watched the rain streak across the window, distorting the city lights into long, bleeding lines of color. No, I whispered, touching the cold glass one last time. I'm going home. The flight to Savannah was a blur of white noise and turbulence. I sat in the middle seat, squeezed between a man in a gray suit who smelled of peppermint and anxiety, and a woman knitting a scarf the color of dried blood. I didn't close my eyes. I couldn't. Every time I blinked, I saw the flashing lights of a police cruiser reflecting off the wet pavement of my childhood driveway. When the plane doors opened, the humidity hit me like a physical blow. It wasn't just heat, it was weight. The air in the south is thick, heavy with the scent of pluff mud, salt marsh, and blooming jasmine. It sticks to your skin. It crawls into your lungs. In Tacoma, the cold keeps you alert, sharp. Here, the air drugs you. It pulls you down into a slow, sticky rhythm that makes it impossible to think clearly. I walked through the terminal, my small carry-on bag bumping against my hip. I felt like an imposter. I was wearing my Elizabeth clothes, dark denim, a loose linen shirt, sensible shoes, but my body was reacting like Jade. My pulse was in my throat. My eyes were darting to every corner, assessing threats, checking exits. It's muscle memory. You never really lose it. You just teach your muscles to sleep. Now, they were wide awake. I rented a nondescript white sedan. The steering wheel was hot to the touch. As I drove out of the airport and onto the highway, the landscape began to change. The tall, orderly pines gave way to sprawling live oaks draped in Spanish moss. The moss looked like gray rags, hung out to dry by ghosts. It swung lazily in the breeze, beckoning. I hadn't driven these roads in 7 years, yet my hands knew the way. They turned the wheel without my permission. I passed the exit for downtown, the historic district with its cobblestones and horse-drawn carriages. The polite face Savannah shows the tourists. I kept driving, heading south toward the marshlands, toward the subdivision that used to be respectable, but had slowly started to sag under the weight of economic downturns and hidden secrets. My father's house. I pulled up to the curb 3 houses down. I couldn't park in the driveway. Not yet. I killed the engine and just sat there. The air conditioning died, and the silence rushed in, followed immediately by the screaming of cicadas. That sound. A constant, high-pitched buzz that bores into your skull. The house looked smaller. When I was a child, it felt like a castle. When I was a teenager, it felt like a prison. Now it just looked like a tired brick box. The lawn was overgrown, the grass knee-high and yellowing. The shutters on the second floor, my old room, were closed tight. There was no police tape. Whatever had happened, the visible scars were gone, but I knew the invisible ones were pulsing. I forced myself to open the car door. The heat wrapped around me immediately. I walked up the driveway, my shoes crunching on the gravel. Every step was a battle against the urge to turn around, run back to the car, and drive until I hit the Pacific Ocean again. The front door was a dark mahogany. I remembered the day my father painted it. He had been so proud. "A strong door for a strong family," he had said. I stared at the brass knocker. I didn't have a key. I had thrown mine into a storm drain the night I left. I reached out to knock, but my hand stopped inches from the wood. The door was ajar. Just a crack. A cold spike of adrenaline shot through my stomach. My father was meticulous about security. He locked everything. Windows, doors, hearts. If the door was open, something was wrong. I pushed it. The hinges groaned, a low, mournful sound that echoed into the dark hallway. "Mom?" My voice was thin, fragile. It didn't sound like me. The house smelled of stale air, lemon polish, and something else. Something metallic and sweet. Old flowers? Or something worse. I stepped inside. The foyer was dark. The curtains were drawn in the living room to my left. Dust motes danced in the slivers of light that managed to cut through the gloom. "Mom?" I said, louder this time. Silence. I walked into the living room. My father's leather armchair was there, facing the television. The TV was off. The room was perfectly ordered, yet it felt chaotic. There was a tension in the air, a static charge. I saw the phone on the side table, the landline. The red light was blinking furiously, message after message. I moved toward the kitchen. The linoleum floor was sticky under my shoes. On the counter, a half-finished cup of coffee had grown a skin of mold. A newspaper was spread out, dated 4 days ago. And then I heard it. A sound from upstairs. A rhythmic creaking. Creak, creak, creak. It was the sound of the rocking chair in the master bedroom, my mother's chair. I turned toward the stairs. The carpet runner was worn in the middle, a path tread by years of pacing. I placed my hand on the banister. It felt greasy. I wiped my hand on my jeans and started to climb. Every step was a memory I didn't want. Step 3, the time I came home at 4 a.m. and he was waiting. Step 7, the time I tried to hide the bruises with makeup and she looked away. Step 12, the night I packed my bag. I reached the landing. The hallway was a tunnel of shadows. The door to the master bedroom was open. I walked to the doorway. She was there. My mother was sitting in the rocking chair, facing the window. The curtains were pulled, but a single beam of afternoon sun hit the side of her face. She looked translucent. Her skin was like parchment paper, thin and gray. Her hair, once dyed a fierce, defiant blonde, was white and stringy, hanging limp around her shoulders. She was rocking back and forth, clutching something to her chest. "Mom?" I whispered. She didn't stop rocking. She didn't blink. "I told you not to come," she said. Her voice was flat. Dead. She didn't turn to look at me. She just kept staring at the curtains. I stepped into the room. The air here was colder than the rest of the house. "You called me. You left a voicemail. I told you to stay away," she repeated. The rocking sped up slightly. Creak, 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 creak. "Mom, look at me." Slowly, painfully, she turned her head. When her eyes met mine, I gasped. They were hollow. The pupils were pinpricks. But it wasn't the emptiness that scared me. It was the recognition. She looked at me the way she used to look at me when I came home with cash in my pocket, with a mixture of hunger and revulsion. "He's gone, Elizabeth," she said. "They took him." "Who?" I asked, taking a step closer. "Who took Dad?" "The police said." "Not the police," she hissed. The energy suddenly spiked in the room. She stopped rocking. She leaned forward, her knuckles white around the object she was holding. "The police don't know anything. They think it was a robbery. They think he surprised someone." She laughed. A dry, rattling sound. Surprise someone. Arthur never surprised anyone. He knew everything. She held out the object she was clutching. It was a black notebook, leather-bound, worn at the corners. I froze. I knew that notebook. My father was a small businessman, or that's what he told the neighbors. He owned a chain of laundromats and a few car washes, cash businesses, places where dirty things go in and clean things come out. But the dirt has to go somewhere. Why do you have that? I asked, my voice trembling. He was trying to buy his way out, she whispered. Again, she looked at me, her eyes drilling into my soul. He used your name, Elizabeth. He told them you were the collateral. The room spun, the floor tilted. Collateral. The word hung in the air like smoke. What do you mean? I managed to choke out. 7 years ago, she said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. When you left, you thought you ran away. You thought you escaped. She shook her head. Arthur made a deal. He sold your debt to them. He told them he knew where you were going. He told them he could bring you back if he couldn't pay. My knees gave out. I sat down heavily on the edge of the bed. The mattress sagged under me. He knew where I was? He always knew, she said. He had someone watching you. In Tacoma. The library. The apartment on 6th Avenue. The coffee shop you go to on Sundays. The world I had built. The safe, gray fortress of Elizabeth, shattered into a million pieces. I hadn't been safe. I had been livestock. Grazing in a pen I didn't know was fenced. Why? I asked. The tears were coming now, hot and angry. Why didn't you tell me? Because I was afraid, she said simply. I was afraid of him, and I was afraid of them. Who are they, Mom? She looked at the notebook again. The ones who came for him 3 nights ago. The ones who made him open the safe. She paused, her lip trembling. I hid in the closet. I watched through the slats. I saw what they did. She stood up, her legs shaky. She walked over to me and shoved the notebook into my hands. It felt heavy. It felt like a bomb. They want this, she said. Arthur stole it from them before they killed him. He thought it was leverage. He thought it would save him. Mom, we need to call the police. No, she screamed it. She grabbed my shoulders, her fingers digging into my flesh. No police. They own the police, you stupid girl. Do you remember nothing? Do you remember nothing of the world you lived in? She was shaking me. They killed him because he couldn't pay. And now they know you're here. They saw your car. They saw you walk in. I pulled away from her. What? I saw the black SUV pass by 3 times while you were sitting in the car, she said. They are waiting. My heart hammered against my ribs. Waiting for what? For you to find what they couldn't. She pointed at the notebook in my hands. That book has the names. All the names. The politicians, the judges, the clients. Clients. The word triggered a sensory flash. The smell of expensive cologne masking the scent of sweat. The feeling of silk ties. The sound of ice clinking in a glass. I looked down at the notebook. I opened it to a random page. Dates, amounts, initials. And then, halfway down the page, a name written in full. Senator J.C. Next to it, a notation in my father's cramped handwriting. Payment rendered. Service provided by Jade. The date was 8 years ago. I stared at the page. The letters swam before my eyes. He kept records, I whispered. He kept records of me? He kept records of everyone, my mother said. She walked back to the window and peered through the crack in the curtains. He was blackmailing them. That's how we kept the house. That's how we paid for the cars. Not the laundromats. You were the business, Elizabeth. Even after you left, the threat of what you knew, that was the business. I felt sick. I felt a violent need to purge my stomach. My father hadn't just allowed me to fall into that life. He had monetized the fall. He had farmed my trauma. They want the book, my mother said, her voice monotone again. And they want the witness. She turned to me. You have to run, Elizabeth. You have to take the book and run. Come with me, I said. We can leave now. She smiled. A sad, broken smile. I can't leave. This is my house. Arthur is here. She patted the empty air beside her as if patting a dog. Besides, I'm already dead to them. I'm just the widow. You are the loose end. Suddenly, the sound of breaking glass shattered the silence downstairs. My mother flinched. They're here, she whispered. The air in the room changed instantly. The humidity seemed to vanish, replaced by a cold, sharp clarity. Go, she hissed. She pushed me toward the master bathroom. The window, the trellis. You used to climb it when you snuck out to meet those boys. Climb it now. Mom, I'm not leaving you. If you stay, we both die, she said. Her eyes were suddenly clear, fierce. For the first time in my life, she looked like a mother protecting her child, not a woman protecting her lifestyle. Go, take the book, burn it, publish it. I don't care. Just survive. Downstairs, heavy footsteps crunched on the broken glass. A deep voice called out, Mrs. Miller, we know you have company. It was a voice I recognized. It was the voice from the phone 7 years ago. The voice that said, family pays for family. I looked at my mother one last time. She stood in the doorway of the bedroom, blocking the view from the hall. She straightened her spine. She smoothed her hair. Go, she mouthed. I turned and ran into the bathroom. I locked the door. I threw the window open. The trellis was old, covered in ivy that was thick and woody. I climbed out. The wood groaned under my weight. The humidity hit me again, wrapping around me. As I lowered myself down, scratching my arms on the rough brick, I heard the bedroom door kick open upstairs. I heard my mother's voice, calm, dignified. She's not here. She never came home. And then, the sound of a slap, sharp, brutal. I hit the ground and ran. I didn't run to the rental car. They would be watching it. I ran into the overgrown backyard toward the woods that bordered the marsh. I ran into the mud, into the thorns, into the thick, suffocating green of the south. I ran until my lungs burned and my legs felt like lead. I ran until the sounds of the house faded into the buzz of the cicadas. I collapsed behind a fallen oak tree, gasping for air. I clutched the notebook to my chest. I was alone in the swamp. I had no car, no phone. I had left it in the rental, and no plan, but I had the truth. And for the first time in 7 years, I wasn't running away from my past. I was holding it in my hands. The sun began to set, casting long, bloody shadows across the water. The mosquitoes began to rise. I opened the notebook again. The fading light illuminated one entry near the bottom of the last page. Project Phoenix. Subject, Elizabeth. Status, active. My father hadn't just sold my debt. He had sold my future. I closed the book. The fear was still there, pounding in my veins. But something else was rising with it. Something cold and hard. I wasn't Elizabeth the librarian anymore. And I wasn't Jade the victim. I was something else. Something born in the mud and the dark. I wiped the mud from my face. Okay, I whispered to the swamp. Let's play. The truth finally rose above the shame, and dignity found its way back. If this moment hit you deep, subscribe, so you never miss another story like this. I waited in the dark until the moon came up. It was a hunter's moon, big and yellow. I needed to move. I couldn't stay in the woods. They would bring dogs. Men like that always have dogs. I navigated through the marsh, trusting the landscape I had explored as a lonely child. I knew where the ground was solid and where it would swallow you whole. I made my way toward the old service road that ran behind the subdivision. My plan was forming in fragments. I needed a phone. I needed a car that wasn't tracked. I needed a weapon. But first, I needed a sanctuary. There was only one place left. The one place my father would never go. The one place that was too dirty for him. The shelter. Not a homeless shelter. The women's shelter downtown. The one run by Sister Clarence. I used to volunteer there in high school, part of my good girl mask, before the mask slipped. Sister Clarence saw everything and said nothing. She was the only person in Savannah who knew the names of every judge and every pimp and treated them with equal disdain. It took me 3 hours to walk to the edge of the city. I stuck to the shadows, avoiding streetlights. My clothes were torn, my shoes ruined. I looked like one of the women who walked the corners of Abercorn Street. Irony is a cruel architect. I reached the shelter just after midnight. The neon cross above the door flickered with a buzzing electrical sound. I rang the bell. The slit in the door slid open. Eyes, old and wise, peered out. "We're full," a voice rasped. "Sister Clarence," I said. "It's Elizabeth Miller." The eyes widened slightly. The slit closed. Bolts slid back. The heavy metal door opened. Sister Clarence stood there. She was tiny, barely 5 feet tall, dressed in a gray habit that looked like it had been through a war. She looked me up and down. She saw the mud. She saw the notebook clutched in my hand. She saw the terror in my eyes. "Child," she said softly, "you look like you've been to hell." "I have," I said, "and I brought a souvenir." I held up the notebook. She pulled me inside and locked the door. "Come, the kitchen is warm." We sat at a metal table. She poured me strong black coffee. I told her everything. The call, the house, the notebook, my mother. She listened without interrupting. She traced the rim of her mug with a gnarled finger. When I finished, she was silent for a long time. Then she reached out and tapped the notebook. "You know what this is, don't you?" she asked. "Blackmail," I said. "It's a map," she corrected. "A map of the rot in this city. Your father was a gardener of poison, Elizabeth. He watered the roots so he could sell the fruit." She stood up and walked to a cupboard. She pulled out a small burner phone and a set of keys. "There is an old truck in the back. It belongs to the church. It runs, mostly. Take it." "Where am I going?" "You're going to finish it," she said. "You can't run. You know that. They will find you. If not today, then tomorrow. If not in Tacoma, then in Timbuktu. So what do I do? You change the game," she said. Her eyes sparkled with a fierce intelligence. "They expect you to hide. They expect you to be the victim. They expect Jade." She leaned in close. "Don't give them Jade. Give them the one thing they are terrified of." "What's that?" "A woman who has nothing left to lose." She handed me the keys. "There is a journalist. An old friend of mine. He lives in Atlanta. He's been trying to break the Southern Ring for years. He will know what to do with that book, but you have to get it to him physically. No email, no mail, hand to hand. Atlanta is 4 hours away," I said. "Then you better start driving." I stood up. I felt a strange sensation in my chest. It wasn't fear anymore. It was clarity. The neurochemistry of my brain was shifting. The dopamine of a clear goal was overriding the cortisol of trauma. "Thank you, sister." "Don't thank me yet," she said. The road to Atlanta goes through the dark. I took the keys and the phone. I walked to the back door. Elizabeth, she called out. I turned. Your mother, she said. She didn't just stay because she was afraid. She stayed to buy you time. Don't waste it. I nodded. A lump formed in my throat. I pushed open the door and stepped into the humid night. The truck was a rusted Ford. It smelled of oil and old hymnals. I threw the notebook on the passenger seat. I turned the key. The engine coughed, sputtered, and then roared to life. I pulled out of the alley. I didn't look back. I was going to Atlanta. I was going to burn my father's legacy to the ground. And from the ashes, I was going to build something that no one could ever take away from me. But as I merged onto the interstate, my phone, the burner Sister Clarence gave me, buzzed. One new text message. I glanced at it. We have her. Bring the book to the port. Warehouse 4. You have 2 hours. Or the widow joins the husband. My blood ran cold. They had my mother. I looked at the exit sign for Atlanta. Then I looked at the sign for the Savannah Port Authority. Atlanta meant justice. It meant exposure. It meant freedom. The port meant a trap. It meant death. But it also meant my mother, the woman who had sold me out, the woman who had watched me drown, the woman who had just saved my life. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. Loops, I whispered to myself. It's all loops. Pain, reflection, loss. I slammed on the brakes and spun the wheel. The truck tires screeched against the asphalt. I wasn't going to Atlanta. I was going to the water. This story began in silence, but it didn't end there. Tell me, which moment spoke to you the loudest? Your voice matters here. The decision to turn the truck around wasn't made by my brain. It was made by my blood. There is a strange, archaic loyalty that lives in our DNA, defying all logic, all self-preservation. My mother had sold me out to my father's ambition years ago. She had turned a blind eye when the wolves were at the door because she liked the warmth of the fireplace inside. By every metric of sanity, I should have kept driving to Atlanta. I should have handed the book to the journalist, watched the empire burn from a safe distance, and mourned my mother as a casualty of her own choices. But you cannot mourn the living, and you cannot outrun the ghost of the child who still just wants her mother to look at her and say, "You are safe." The tires screamed against the asphalt as I swung the heavy Ford back toward the coast. The momentum threw me against the driver's side door, bruising my shoulder. Good. I needed the pain. Pain is data. Pain tells you where the edges of your body are. It anchors you in the present when your mind tries to fracture into the past. The drive to the port of Savannah is a descent into the industrial throat of the city. The Spanish moss and antebellum charm vanish, replaced by miles of chain-link fences, sodium vapor lights that turn the night a sickly orange, and the looming skeletons of shipping cranes. They look like prehistoric beasts, steel dinosaurs bowing their heads to the water, feeding on commerce. I checked the burner phone. 1 hour and 40 minutes left. I needed a plan. I was driving a rusted church truck into a trap set by men who dissolved problems in acid baths. I had a notebook that could bring down senators, but right now, it was just paper. Paper burns. Paper tears. Paper is fragile. I looked at the notebook on the seat beside me. It was too valuable to hand over. If I gave it to them, they would kill us both. The leverage was the only shield I had. Once the shield is down, the sword strikes. I needed a decoy. I pulled into a 24-hour gas station about 5 miles from the port entrance. The fluorescent lights buzzed with the sound of 1,000 trapped flies. I kept my head down, pulling the hood of my rain-soaked jacket over my face. I bought a roll of black duct tape, a lighter, a bottle of lighter fluid, and 3 cheap composition notebooks from the dusty school supply aisle. Back in the truck, my hands worked with a speed that frightened me. It was the dexterity of Jade. Jade knew how to fix a broken heel in 30 seconds. Jade knew how to hide money in the lining of a bra without leaving a lump. I took the real notebook and wrapped it tight in a plastic grocery bag. Then, I reached under the dashboard of the truck. The old Ford had a loose panel near the fuse box. I wedged the real book up inside the mess of wires and insulation. It was a risk. If they searched the truck, they might find it. But if I carried it on me, they would definitely take it. Then I took the 3 cheap notebooks. I taped them together to mimic the thickness of the ledger. I tore the cover off an old hymnal I found in the glove box, black leatherette, roughly the same texture as my father's book, and taped it over the dummy stack. In the dim light of the warehouse, it would pass. But a visual fake wasn't enough. It needed to feel dangerous. I opened the dummy book and doused the pages in lighter fluid. Not enough to drip, but enough to smell. Enough to be volatile. I sat back, breathing hard. The smell of the fluid mixed with the smell of the marsh. It smelled like the nights I used to spend in the back of luxury cars. The smell of expensive vodka and gasoline. Micro-tension. My jaw was so tight I thought my teeth would crack. I forced a breath. 4 counts in. Hold for 4. 4 counts out. Reset the vagus nerve. I am not a victim. I am a player in the game. I put the truck in gear and drove toward the water. Warehouse 4 was located at the far end of the terminal, away from the active loading zones. The security gate was open. They were expecting me. The arrogance of it made my skin crawl. They didn't need to lock the gate because they knew I wasn't coming out unless they allowed it. I drove slowly, the gravel crunching under the tires sounding like breaking bones. The warehouse was a cavernous metal structure, the corrugated sides rusted by the salt air. A single light hung over the main bay door, which was rolled up halfway. 2 black SUVs were parked out front. The engines were running. I could see the exhaust plumes rising into the cool night air, red in the taillight glow. I stopped the truck 20 yards from the entrance. I didn't kill the engine. I left it idling. A subtle message. I am ready to run. I grabbed the dummy book. I grabbed the lighter. I stepped out. The wind off the river was cold. It whipped my hair across my face. I pushed it back. I walked toward the light. A man stepped out from the shadows of the warehouse entrance. He was tall, wearing a dark trench coat that looked expensive and out of place in the grime of the port. He didn't have a weapon drawn. He didn't need one. His posture was the weapon. Shoulders back, chin up, hands loosely clasped, total dominance. I didn't know his name, but I knew his type. He was a cleaner. He didn't get his hands dirty. He hired people to do that. He was the one who made the phone calls. Elizabeth? He said. His voice was smooth like oil on water. You made good time. Where is she? My voice was low. I channeled the vocal registry of the library. Calm, authoritative, not the shrill panic of a daughter. Inside, he said, gesturing with a tilt of his head. Come in out of the cold. I stay here, I said, planting my feet. Bring her out. He smiled. It was a smile that didn't reach his eyes. That's not how this works. You have something of ours. We have something of yours. We do the exchange inside, away from prying eyes. Satellites, you know? He was mocking me. I have the book, I said, lifting the black bundle. But if I sense anything wrong, I burn it. I flicked the lighter. The flame danced in the wind. It's soaked in accelerant. 1 second, and your leverage turns to ash. His eyes narrowed. A micro-expression of annoyance. Good. I had disrupted his script. He expected submission. He got negotiation. Don't be dramatic, Elizabeth. It doesn't suit you. Bring her to the door, I repeated, or I dropped the lighter. He stared at me for a long moment, calculating. Then he raised a hand and snapped his fingers. From the darkness of the warehouse, 2 men emerged. They were dragging a figure between them, my mother. She looked small, so incredibly small. Her clothes were disheveled, her gray hair a mess. Her hands were zip-tied in front of her, but she was walking. She was alive. When she saw me, her head snapped up. Elizabeth, she screamed. It was a raw, guttural sound. Run! You idiot girl, run! One of the men jerked her back. She stumbled. The anger in my chest flared hot and white. Let her go. The book first, the man in the trench coat said. He held out his hand. Send her to me, I said. Halfway. I walk to her, you walk to us. We make the trade in the middle. He sighed. As if I were a petulant child delaying bedtime. Fine. He nodded to his men. They released my mother. She stumbled forward, her eyes wide with terror. Walk to the truck, Mom, I called out. Don't stop. Just walk. I started walking forward. The fake book clutched in my left hand, the lighter burning in my right. We met in the middle of the gravel expanse under the sickly yellow light. My mother grabbed my arm as she passed. Her fingers were ice cold. They won't let us leave, she hissed. They killed Arthur. They'll kill us. Get in the truck, I whispered without looking at her. Lock the doors. Keep the engine running. Elizabeth, go. She scrambled toward the Ford. I turned my attention back to the man in the coat. He was 5 feet away now. I could smell his cologne, sandalwood and tobacco, the scent of my nightmares. A touching reunion, he said. Now, the property. I held out the book. This is everything? My father's insurance? It is the property of the organization, he said. Your father was merely borrowing it. He died for this, I said. He died because he forgot his place. The man replied coldly. He thought he could sell what he didn't own. He thought he could buy freedom. There is no freedom, Elizabeth. There is only the agreement. He reached for the book. I let him take it. As his fingers closed around the dummy text, I looked him in the eye. You're right, I said. There is no freedom, but there is consequences. I released the book. At the exact moment he took the weight of it, I spun around and ran. Mom, drive! I screamed. The man looked down at the book. He felt the tape. He smelled the lighter fluid. It's a fake, he roared. I dove toward the truck. The passenger door was open. My mother was fumbling with the gear shift, her zip-tied hands making it clumsy. A gunshot cracked the air. The sound was deafening. I felt the wind of the bullet pass by my ear. It shattered the side mirror of the truck. I threw myself into the cab, slamming the door. Drive! Go! Go! My mother stomped on the gas. The tires spun in the gravel, finding purchase, and the truck fishtailed wildly before shooting forward. More shots. Pop, pop, pop. The back window shattered, raining safety glass over us. I ducked, covering my head. My mother was screaming, a high, keen sound, but she kept her foot on the floor. We tore out of the warehouse lot, swerving onto the access road. I looked back. The SUVs were already moving. They're following, my mother yelled. Elizabeth, what did you do? I bought us time, I shouted. Turn left, get to the highway. I can't drive like this. She held up her bound hands. I reached over, grabbing the wheel to steady it. Just press the pedal. I've got the wheel. We were careening down the dark road, a two-headed monster of panic and adrenaline. I steered with my left hand, reaching into my pocket with my right for the pocket knife I kept on my keychain, a habit from the library for opening boxes. Hold still, I commanded. I sawed at the plastic zip ties on her wrists. The truck hit a pothole, bouncing violently. The knife slipped, grazing her skin. She didn't flinch. The plastic snapped. Okay, I said. You drive. Drive like Dad taught you. She looked at me. For a second, the fear in her eyes was replaced by something else. Pride? Or maybe just shock. Where are we going? She asked. Not Atlanta, I said. We can't make it to Atlanta. They'll catch us on the open road. Those SUVs have twice the horsepower of this junk heap. Then where? I looked at the road signs flashing by. We were heading back toward the city, but the port loop offered another option. The marshes, I said. The old river road. That road is a dead end, she said. It goes into the wetlands. It floods at high tide. Exactly, I said. They have heavy cars. We have a truck with high clearance. And I know those roads. I used to go there. I didn't say why I used to go there. I didn't say that Old River Road was where the girls went when they didn't have a hotel room. I didn't say that I knew every turnout, every mud pit, every hiding spot, because I had memorized them while staring at the ceiling of a stranger's car. My trauma was now my tactical advantage. The loop of memory was closing. We turned off the paved road onto a dirt track. The canopy of oaks closed over us, blocking out the moon. The truck bounced and groaned. Behind us, two sets of headlights turned onto the dirt. They were gaining. Elizabeth, my mother said, her voice trembling. I need to tell you something. Not now, Mom. Yes, now. She slammed her hand on the dashboard. In case this is it. I looked at her. Her face was illuminated by the dashboard lights. Ghostly green. The voicemail, she said, when I called you. I know, I said. You told me to stay away. No, she said. Before that. The reason I called. She took a breath that sounded like a rattle. I didn't call you because your father died. I called you because he left you something else. Something not in the book. The truck hit a patch of mud and slid sideways. My mother corrected the skid with surprising strength. What are you talking about? A key, she said. He mailed it to you. To the library. 2 days before he died. I stared at her. I never got a key. It's in the mail, Elizabeth. It's probably sitting in your mailbox in Tacoma right now. My mind raced. A key. What does it open? A safety deposit box, she said. In Seattle. He moved the real money. The clean money. Millions, Elizabeth. He wanted you to have it. He wanted you to be free. I felt a laugh bubble up in my throat. A hysterical, jagged laugh. He wanted me to be free? I asked. So he blackmailed senators with my name, sold my body to pay his debts, and then tried to buy my forgiveness with cash he skimmed off the top? He loved you, she said weakly. He loved himself. I spat. And he loved the lifestyle. Don't rewrite history just because he's dead. The headlights behind us were getting closer. The high beams were blinding in the rearview mirror. Hold on, I said. There's a turn coming up. The Devil's Elbow. It's sharp. If they don't know it's there, they'll go into the swamp, my mother finished. Speed up, I said. We'll flip. Speed up. She floored it. The engine roared, a dying mechanical scream. The speedometer climbed. 60, 70. On a dirt road. The trees were a blur. The turn was coming. I could see the break in the tree line where the road hooked sharp right. Straight ahead was nothing but black water and cypress knees. Now! I yelled. Brake and turn. Hard! My mother slammed the brakes. The truck shuddered. She wrenched the wheel. We drifted, the back end swinging out over the edge of the ditch. The tires caught the mud, spraying debris. We spun 180 degrees but stayed on the road. The first SUV didn't react in time. It flew past us. I saw the brake lights flare red a split second too late. There was a massive splash, a crunch of metal hitting a tree stump, then silence followed by the hissing of steam. The second SUV slammed on its brakes, skidding to a halt just feet from the edge. Go! I yelled. Don't stop to look! We roared back the way we came, passing the stopped SUV. I saw the driver's face in the window. He looked shocked. We were back on the straightaway. We had lost one, but the other one was turning around. We can't outrun them forever, my mother said. She was hyperventilating now. We need to get out of the truck. Hide in the woods. No, I said. I'm not hiding anymore. I'm done hiding. I reached under the dash and pulled out the real notebook. Pull over, I said. What? Pull over. Let them catch up. Are you insane? Trust me, I said. For the first time in your life, Mom, trust me. She looked at me. She saw the set of my jaw. She saw the cold fire in my eyes. She pulled the truck over to the side of the dirt road and killed the lights. We sat in the dark. The silence of the swamp rushed back in. Peepers, bullfrogs, the distant sound of the other SUV engine revving as it turned around. Get out, I whispered. Get into the bushes. Stay down. What are you going to do? I'm going to end this. She hesitated, then opened her door and slipped into the darkness of the undergrowth. I sat in the driver's seat. I placed the notebook on the dashboard. I turned on the interior dome light. I waited. The headlights of the remaining SUV appeared around the bend. They swept over the truck. They slowed down. The vehicle stopped 20 feet away. The doors opened. 2 men got out. One of them was the man in the trench coat. He looked angry now. His composure was cracked. He held a gun. A real one. Silenced. He walked toward the truck, keeping the light in my eyes. "End of the road, Elizabeth," he called out. "Clever trick at the turn, but tricks run out." I didn't move. I just tapped the notebook on the dashboard. "I have the real one," I said. "I know," he said, "and I'm going to take it from your corpse." "You could," I said calmly. My heart rate was 140, but my voice was steady. "But then you'd never know about the copy." He stopped. "What copy?" "The digital scan," I lied. "I made it at the library. Before I left Tacoma, it's set to auto-send to the Washington Post, the New York Times, and the FBI Cyber Division if I don't enter a code into my server every 12 hours. It was a bluff. A massive cinematic bluff. I didn't have a server. I didn't have a scan. I had a library card and a rusted truck. But psychology is about leverage. It's about fear. "You're lying," he said, but he didn't raise the gun. "Am I?" I asked. "I'm a librarian, Mr. Cleaner. Information is my business. Do you think I brought the only physical copy into a war zone without a backup? That would be unprofessional." I saw the doubt creep into his posture. His shoulders dropped a fraction of an inch. "What do you want?" he asked. "I want you to leave," I said. "I want you to get back in your car, drive away, and tell your bosses that the Miller account is closed. If I disappear, the file sends. If my mother disappears, the file sends. If I see a suspicious car on my street, the file sends." "You can't live like that," he said, looking over your shoulder forever. "I've lived like that for 7 years," I said. "I'm used to it. Are you? Are your clients used to it? Senator J.C. Is he ready for his preferences to be on the front page?" He flinched at the name. "Walk away," I said. "And I keep the code entering. I keep the secrets buried. Mutual destruction is the only peace we're going to get." He stood there for a long, agonizing minute. The wind rustled the Spanish moss above us. Then slowly, he lowered the gun. "If that file ever leaks," he said, his voice a low growl, "there is nowhere on this earth you can hide." "I know," I said. "Now get out of my swamp." He stared at me one last time, with a look of grudging respect. Then he turned, signaled to his man, and walked back to the SUV. They backed up. They turned around. The taillights faded into the distance. I sat there, frozen. I didn't breathe until the sound of their engine was completely gone. Then, the adrenaline crash hit me. My hands started to shake so violently I couldn't grip the steering wheel. I slumped forward, resting my forehead on the dashboard, right next to the notebook. "Elizabeth?" My mother's voice came from the darkness. "It's okay," I whispered. "They're gone." She climbed back into the truck. She looked at me, her eyes wide. "Did you really?" she asked. "Is there really a digital copy?" I looked at her and smiled, a tired, broken smile. "No," I said. "I just told a good story." She stared at me, and then she started to laugh. It was a hysterical release, bordering on tears. "You are your father's daughter," she said. "No," I said, starting the engine. "I'm better." We drove out of the swamp in silence. The sun was beginning to crack the horizon, painting the sky in bruises of purple and red. We didn't go back to the house. We went to a diner on the outskirts of the city. We sat in a booth with cracked vinyl seats. We ordered coffee and pancakes we didn't eat. "What now?" my mother asked. She looked old in the fluorescent light. The adrenaline had faded, leaving her frail. "I go back to Tacoma," I said. "I find that key. I move the money." "And the book?" I patted the bag on the seat next to me. "I burn it." "Burn it?" She looked horrified. "That's millions of dollars of leverage. That's a chain," I said. "I'm done with chains." "And me?" she asked. Her voice was small. I looked at her. I saw the woman who raised me. I saw the woman who failed me. I saw the woman who saved me. "You come with me," I said. She shook her head. "I can't leave Savannah. My life is here. Arthur is here." "Arthur is dead," I said brutally. "And the house is compromised. If you stay, they will come back. The bluff won't last forever." "I can't go to the Pacific Northwest," she said. "It rains all the time." "You get used to it," I said. "It washes things clean." We sat there for a long time. The waitress refilled our coffee. The world outside started to wake up. Trucks rumbled by on the highway. "I need to use the restroom," my mother said. She stood up, her legs unsteady. I watched her walk away. I watched her back, bent with the weight of her choices. I looked down at my phone. I had a missed call, unknown number. I felt a prick of anxiety, but then I realized it was probably Sister Clarence checking in. I took a sip of coffee. It was bitter and burnt. It tasted like survival. 10 minutes passed. My mother didn't come back. I frowned. I stood up and walked to the back of the diner. I pushed open the door to the women's restroom. Empty. The window was open. The screen had been popped out. I ran to the window and looked out into the alley. Nothing, just dumpsters and stray cats, and a piece of paper weighted down by a rock on the windowsill. I picked it up. It was a napkin, written in shaky ballpoint pen. "I can't be a burden anymore. You were right. You are better." Take the key. Live your life. Don't look for me. I love you, Mom. I stood there in the alley, the morning wind chilling my sweat-drenched clothes. She was gone. She had chosen her own exile. She knew that as long as she was with me, I would never really be free of the past. She was the anchor, and she had cut the line. I walked back to the booth. I picked up the notebook. I picked up the check. I walked out to the truck. I was alone again. But this time, the silence wasn't empty. It was full of possibility. I drove to the nearest beach, Tybee Island. I walked out onto the sand. The ocean was gray and churning. I took the notebook out of the bag. I found a metal trash can near the dunes. I threw the book in. I doused it with the rest of the lighter fluid. I lit it. I watched the names burn. I watched the debts turn to smoke. I watched my father's legacy curl into black ash and float away on the sea breeze. Then I turned my back on the Atlantic Ocean. I had a plane to catch, I had a key to find, and I had a life to build. Not as Jade, not as Elizabeth the victim, but as someone new. Someone who had walked through the fire and come out holding the match. The journey back to Tacoma felt different. The fear was gone. In its place was a quiet, humming strength. When I landed, it was raining. Of course it was. I took a cab to my apartment. I walked up the stairs. I checked my mailbox. There it was. A small, yellow envelope. No return address. I opened it. A silver key fell into my hand. It was heavy. It felt real. I walked into my apartment. It smelled of dust and unread books. It smelled like home. I walked to the window and looked out at the gray city. My mother was out there somewhere, running, hiding, surviving, just like she taught me. I pressed the key against the cold glass. "Goodbye, Mom," I whispered. And for the first time in 7 years, I let myself cry. Not tears of shame, not tears of fear, but tears of grief. Grief for the little girl who was lost. Grief for the family that never was. But tears dry, and rain stops. I wiped my face. I turned away from the window. I have work to do. The story ends here, but the echo remains.